It is Thursday, August 17th, 2017. Our panelists today, Shannon Reeves, back from the first day of school at Alabama A&M, where he is an assistant professor of political science, and political consultant Stan McDonald is with us as well. I'm Dale Jackson. You're watching Yellowhammer TV live. Yellowhammer TV Live kicks off. We got a lot to talk about today. Donald Trump and his terrible communications strategy continues on all things, harming his presidency. We'll get to that here in just a bit. College campuses across the country are canceling events in violation of free speech, so we're going to get into all of that as well. And Congressman Mo Brooks, when he went to the polling place, he was listed as an inactive voter. The media is playing this up to be a much bigger deal than it actually is. We'll talk about a little bit of that as well. And the Attorney General of the state of Alabama is taking on Birmingham over monuments. Yep, these are the things that are going to come up. Let's go ahead and get to the headlines. All right, gentlemen, the President of the United States is embroiled in yet another controversy. I don't know if we would argue this is the biggest controversy that has surrounded his presidency so far, but let's just say it's like the fifth one this week, and there will be 5 more next week. I remember it seems like 7 years ago we were talking about him taking on Jeff Sessions. It just seems like forever. As of right now, Donald Trump is on, I believe, his 3rd communications director, and we are now dealing with someone named Hope Hicks. She has been, an advisor to the president on communication issues for a long time, to which I would say, yeah, let's give that person a promotion because they're doing such a good job. Donald Trump is setting fire to his presidency every single day. Gentlemen, Stan, you're a political consultant. If you were advising the president of the United States, shouldn't he just maybe shut this thing down for a couple of days, stop talking to the press, go off to New Jersey and sit in a room and watch TV? Stan, I mean, should he shut this thing down? Because his PR game is weak.
Yeah, it probably would be a good idea. Not shut it down altogether. I know you're just setting that out there. But the biggest thing I think that he should do is really decide what it is he's trying to accomplish. I remember I read an article years back about a presidency or executive. There's so much that they really can accomplish, and he should decide in advance what he wants to be known as president, and eliminate a lot of the stuff that he just flies around everywhere all the time.
He's like lurching from issue to issue to issue. He's not in control of anything. He is solely going off the news of the day. He's like Twitter feed. I mean, he's basically just responding to what is happening at that particular moment. Shannon, you've done a lot in messaging, in political messaging as well. The President of the United States, he's his own comms director. I mean, this Hope Hicks person, she has been an advisor of his, but it seems like he's putting someone in place where she's just a figurehead. He's still going to control the whole thing. The other day, he goes out to Trump Tower. He wasn't supposed to answer any questions. He was supposed to talk about infrastructure. He's like, all right, let's go. So is he his own communications director? And if he is, maybe he should shut himself down?
Well, being your own communications director is like being your own lawyer, and a doctor being his own patient, patient being his own doctor. The key to communications is, number one, first of all, you have to have an agenda. And with the agenda, then your communications and messaging have to be disciplined around the agenda. The overall goal, if you're an elected official, you're in politics, you have to be disciplined in doing for what the voters what you told the voters you would do. You have to be disciplined in trying to execute to get that done. And communications is a big part of it, because communications, why do we have it? It's to convince those who are in the body politic that this is the right direction to go into, because you're providing leadership, but it's also to assure the voters and the general population that the government is operating in their best interest.
You know, the President of the United States has the ability to change the news cycle day by day, if he wants to. It seems like his current strategy is never to change it for the better. It is, like I said, to go from controversy to controversy. never shutting things down. They kind of just die out. Is that what's going to happen with this monument stuff?
Well, like you're saying, he likes chaos. And, yeah, I think that it's – I don't know. You know, we talk about it every week. You know, how in the world do you predict or what Donald Trump is doing? And he likes the chaos. All things go from order to disorder with him. As far as the monuments things go, yeah, he needs to just shut up about it, really.
Yeah, or come up with a better answer. Let's move on. Shannon, you're on a college campus every single day at the University of Florida, my alma mater, and Texas A&M. They have shut down events that were planned citing security reasons. Now, these events are for white nationalists and alt-right folks, and they want to go to these college campuses. And they want exactly what's happening. They would prefer to be shut down. Let's remember what happened at Auburn. They shut down Richard Spencer. A young man sued Auburn and made $30,000 off of it, and Richard Spencer was still allowed to talk. We know where this is all going. Why are college campuses giving into this nonsense? You've got to let the guy come and show up. You can't shut it down because your students or Antifa or whoever are going to show up and be violent. What is the mindset on a college campus that says, okay, we're not going to allow this even though we're going to get sued and it's going to cause a bigger problem? Why do this?
Well, I mean, first you have to have a policy, right? The university has a policy as to the certain process. The students invite, right? There has to be an invitation. There are student organizations that are certified on campus and have fulfilled the requirements of being an organization on campus and filled out the necessary forms and given the necessary notices so that the venue is correct and certain things. And then there are also certain costs that goes. This is standard, certain costs.
At the University of Florida, they made it clear there was no student organization that invited. They just rent the space out and they rent it out to whoever wants it. And so why the attempt to crack down on these things? Because if you would just allow them to come, say their piece, and let them leave, there's not an issue.
Well, I assume the University of Florida may revisit their policy.
The courts may revisit their policy.
Well, I'm saying you have to have a policy because if you have a policy, we're going to rent out any space to anybody who just wants a space, it may disrupt the educational process that's going on during the course of the day. So you have to have a certain policy. As to, you cannot, if a student organization is sending an invitation and fulfills all the requirements, the university can't then say, well, we don't like the content of the speaker. That's where we've had problems at other institutions across the country, and you can't have it that way. Students have to have, if there's students who want to have certain speakers, they should have the ability to have them. You have to have balanced perspectives. For my classes at Alabama A&M, I don't just have a certain political bent for a certain speaker. I invite speakers because I want my students to have all types of different perspectives because they live in a world of many different perspectives.
Real quick, could Richard Spencer speak at Alabama A&M?
I don't think Richard Spencer would be invited to Alabama A&M.
I don't think so.
And we have a policy.
Okay, so that may be the issue. Maybe Florida does need to revisit their policy. Free speech is in trouble right now. I mean, the simple fact is free speech is in trouble. And I have people of all different ilks, city councilmen, random nobodies, and everybody in between telling me that it's more important to make people feel comfortable than it is to have free speech. And I think that we are heading down a slope where the First Amendment is going to be the first one that we see fall. And I think by popular mob pressure. Is free speech in trouble here?
The Constitution has been in trouble for a long time now. Not just free speech, but the entire Constitution is in trouble. And it's, you know, it's these days people are more beholding and worried and nervous about political thought police than they are the actual Constitution.
Well, I'll tell you, the Constitution is very clear. Hate speech is protected speech. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Hate speech is protected speech, and we need to get this together. Let's move back to the state of Alabama. Donald Trump sent a tweet out the other day. He endorsed Luther Strange, and I think we all saw that may have been coming. But yesterday, Donald Trump sent a tweet out, and there it is on the screen. Wow, Senator Luther Strange picked up a lot of additional support since my endorsement. Now in September runoff, strong on wall and crime. Sad. Well, I'm sorry, that last part was just me. But he must have ran out of characters. But again, this shows me he didn't care about Luther Strange. This is all about him. And so here's my question. If it's all about him, he'll be here. If dragging Strange over the finish line was his goal here, he's got to come and help him, and he's going to come help Strange more. I mean, this shows me he thinks this is about him. Shannon?
No, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I said this early last week, the same thing. I mean, Air Force One has to come on in if Strange was in the runoff, and is going to have to push him across the line because it'll be a national embarrassment. But let's be honest, endorsements are never about the candidate. They're about getting the candidate that can do something for the one who's endorsing most of the time. So, of course, you're looking at a president who has a Senate, a 52-48 Senate, that still can't get things done. So he can't afford to lose any votes. And clearly, Strange and McConnell, Strange has pledged allegiance to working with the majority leader, and there's going to be a guaranteed, solid, unwavering vote on whatever the agenda is. And that's why they're going to spend the money. They spent however much, $8 million, however much they spent to this point, and they're going to dump more money in. They can't afford to lose that vote, or not necessarily lose it. They can't afford to have a question as to when it's time for a vote, to have some independent mind saying, well, I don't know, this might take a moral stand. I'm going to stand alone, which is what they would clearly expect Judge Moore to be.
So they're going to come in here and help Strange out. Do you expect to see, as he says, Air Force One touching down?
I think so. It's like you said, Dale, you've read the situation well. Remember back in the Jeff Sessions things a couple of weeks ago, he couldn't wait to say that it was really Jeff Sessions just standing in front of him, you know, that it was really he down in Mobile, Alabama, that was the causation that Jeff just had to get out there and endorse him because he was so popular. That shows you where his mind is. And so, yes, I think he's going to have to protect his reputation and get down here and make sure he wins.
You know, if he comes down here, and look, I think we all agree, and maybe we don't, but I think we all agree that Moore has this thing in probably the closest. It's almost a lock. He got roughly 40%. The Mo Brooks folks are not going to come running around and say, yeah, Luther Strange, because, you know, tore him down. His folks are going to show up on Election Day. I mean, on the national news, the day of the election, individuals like Chuck Todd were saying, Moore might get 50%. What an embarrassment for the president. So they're prodding this, and they know exactly what they're doing. They're prodding this. Hey, if Moore wins, they're going to blast the president for not being able to bring his guy across the finish line. They're going to blast him for his popularity continuing to sink, even in red states like Alabama. I mean, this is a big deal for the president of the United States. I mean, I just think it's being underplayed what a big deal it is for him. Am I putting too much on it?
No, you're not. It's a very big deal. That's why I disagree with you, and I think Strange will win in the end because there's too much at stake. You got to also understand, we're talking about what, 15% turnout? There's so many voters that did not turn out in the primary that are available to turn out, and that now consultants with Washington, with that type of money, can target exactly who they need to motivate. The robocalls, the direct mail, over 6 weeks to target that did not go out to vote for the last time. So we're talking about the Brooks voters that turned out, that won't turn out again. There's a whole new batch of voters that never turned out.
You think there will be more people that turned out than this time?
I think that I don't know if there'll be, well, there has to be more that turned out this time, or at least a different targeted pool of voters that turned out.
Because if it's the same number, Moore kills him. I mean, so
they have to.
They've got to stand. You're shaking your head over here. I think it's that you're shaking your head at him, not at me.
Well, no, what I'm saying is that there are consultants now know what the map is. They know exactly who voted and where they are. And they know who votes normally. They can try to go target everyone else to try to meet that number. Remember, Moore has always had a ceiling of about 40-42 in every election that has ever run.
He's got a base.
In a regular election, he has a base. So what consultants are going to have to do, they're going to spend a lot of money trying to target and motivate. If you're the president of the United States, they'll figure out, does he need to go to Mobile? Does he need to come to Montgomery? Does he need to come to Birmingham? Does he need to come up here? They're going to figure it out.
All of those places is the correct.
Well, the president is going to come one place if he comes.
Stan, is there a bigger pool here, or is it just more targeted? Because if it's a bigger pool, I can see where Strange might get a chance. If it's the same size or smaller, Moore's folks are coming out no matter what.
I think
they'll ride their horses to the poll.
I think it's going to be about the same size, but I'll tell you this. The type of attacks you're going to see, Roy Moore's horse will probably buck him off on the way to vote the next time, because his wife's not going to recognize him, his dog's not going to recognize him, and his horse is going to hate him. When Mo Brooks has to get up and actually say, guys, I'm not for the Islamic State, and we all know what he's talking about. Or, guys, I'm not Nancy Pelosi's greatest ally. I'm telling you, what they're about to do to Roy Moore is going to be historical. And Roy Moore's people, because of what he has staked out, his people, it's just going to make them mad.
Yeah, I don't see how that really works on Moore's people. What are they going to say? He was kicked off of the bench twice? Because if you say that, you know what they go? And they applaud it. That's his whole shtick.
Yeah, but there's some weak-minded people out there, and I'll tell you, this thing's going to be close.
Okay, all right. The last issue here, and we'll stick on this race. There's a little bubbling of attempted story here on voter suppression, and it is this thing known as inactive voters. In the state of Alabama, and I talked to John Merrill, the Secretary of State, about this on Election Day. Some voters showed up to the polls, including, oddly enough, Congressman Mo Brooks showed up to the polls and was listed as an inactive voter. Between 2016 and this election, John Merrill started sending out postcards saying, hey, if you're a voter, send this back, let us know who you are. Well, a lot of people didn't do it. Apparently, my wife did that for me. I have no idea. But I'm just telling you what happened. I didn't do it.
You married good.
Yeah, apparently she took care of it for me. And she's like, yeah, I remember that. And I sent them back. So apparently some people didn't send them back, and they were listed as inactive voters. The press is trying to frame this as if it's sort of a voter suppression thing. I think it's a paperwork thing. Nobody was denied the right to vote. And I read yesterday that Mo Brooks was denied because he had a black-sounding name. And they were trying to turn that into... But, I mean, the point is, it's just one of those, Southern strategies.
You know where I come from. Yeah. Mo is Maurice.
Yeah, it's Maurice Brooks.
Yes, that's right.
But the reason I mention that is because I think they're trying to turn this into like sort of the South is trying to depress the votes. This isn't what this is. This is overblown, right, Shannon? You're laughing already. So.
I can't even, it's not really, it's like hilarious to me. Yes, this is, look, these things happen all the time. People move around. Secretaries of State have to do their job, and registrars of voters have to do their job. But that's all it is.
Yeah, I thought it was funny that Mo Brooks was on this list. When I heard that because I was talking to John Merrill, and I was having a conversation with him, and he goes, Mo Brooks is one of these people. And I was like, wow, that's pretty funny. This is a nothing, right?
I was one of them, too.
Okay.
I tried to vote, and they came there, and they couldn't find my name, and they had to bring a supervisor over there and say, well, you need to check this inactive list. And there I was, and for the life of me, I still can't really figure out why I'm on it.
Yeah, and John Merrill said that they are now in compliance with the federal law. Before they weren't, and that was part of this whole thing.
But I have thought here and wondered if there's any different interpretation of the name Stan that might possibly.
I don't know. I don't think Stan McDonald falls into that world. But the funny thing about this is, again, you talk to John Merrill, you figure out exactly what it is. It's a very non-sexy story. But if you say, well, the congressman had a problem doing it, and then Alabama has a history of issues like this, it just falls into that thing where you don't fully explain it, you just kind of leave it out there and leave it hanging, and the national media's picked it up a little bit. You get a small version of the story from the local media, and then the national version, they're like, oh, here's a headline, and they don't really cover it. I just thought it was an interesting thing, a little bit.
So the Secretary of State needs Anthony Scaramucci to be his communications director.
Hey,
so he can explain.
Maybe get Trump down here and figure it out.
He can explain. He's a new comms director for the Secretary of State.
The new comms director for Secretary of State, John Merrill, President Donald Trump. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. When we come back, the Attorney General of the state of Alabama, Steve Marshall, is going after the city of Birmingham because they're covering up their monument. We'll talk a little bit about that. Stay tuned. It's Yellowhammer TV Live. Welcome back to Yellowhammer TV Live. Let's talk a little bit about this situation in Birmingham. Yes, the monument situation, since what happened in Charlottesville, has heated up all around the nation. There have been some less than intelligent displays by some on the left over these monuments, and obviously the alt-right has really galvanized this issue and fired up a ton of people. In the city of Birmingham, They made a couple decisions over the last 48 hours. First, they come out with a tarp and cover up a Confederate monument in a city park. Then they come out later and build a plywood enclosure in order to block this thing off from the people. The state's attorney general says that's a violation of a new law that was enforced in Alabama or enacted in Alabama. It was actually the first law signed by Kay Ivey saying you can't do those things. And I want to share this with you because I don't think a lot of people actually went and looked at the law, but here's the beginning of the law before we get into it. To create the Alabama Memorial Preservation Act of 2017 to prohibit the relocation, removal, alteration, renaming, or other disturbance of any architecturally significant building, memorial street, or monument located on public property. Disturbance of any architecturally significant building doesn't apply, obviously, that we're talking about these monuments, but alteration. This is where this is his argument here, that putting up a plywood enclosure or a tarp is an alteration. Now, I was against this law when it passed because I think it's ridiculous, personally. If the city of Birmingham wants to bulldoze the damn thing, let them do it and deal with the consequences. The Attorney General's taking this on for a different reason. He's got an election coming up here in a little bit. He's appointed. He's got the Bentley stink on him. I mean, just the reality, not the same as, I mean, it's true, not the Luther Strange version of it. But Shannon, why is the city of Birmingham doing this? Politics on their side, just like it is on Marshall's?
Look, you're talking about a city that's 73% black. Just the cities of that type, urban cities across the country with populations as such, are following in similar suit. I believe that a local municipality should have the control of how they run their city, their parks. It's their tax dollars. It's not state land. That's what they want to do. That's what they want to do. I don't believe there are some all-white communities or predominantly white communities in this state that don't have a Martin Luther King Boulevard. They shouldn't be mandated to have one. So I think local people should be able, in local communities, to be able to run their city as they choose to be. I'm absolutely against the law. Now, personally, I don't give a damn about monuments, to be quite honest. I was at the courthouse in Huntsville, and they cut the tree back, and I said, oh, there it is. Yeah. And all right, dude, I'm out. You know, it didn't bother me, right? So I don't care about these monuments. But if a local municipality chooses that they want to make alterations and changes, then they're subject to the voters in that local community.
Steve Marshall is citing this law. In the text of this law, there's a $25,000 fine for doing what they're doing. They going to hit him with that? They're going to get him with that 25? I mean, he's taking him to court.
Yes, probably. Sure. You know, Ronald Reagan in his farewell speech warned about this very thing. They asked what was one of his parting concerns, and it was basically, I'm paraphrasing, that there's so much big money in racial discord. And I think basically, and I'm going to be a little sarcastic here, that the Republican consultants got together with William Bell's consultants, and they said, let's create the perfect situation
for both
of us.
Yeah.
And so William Bell's election is on Tuesday. Right. It's a clincher for him. And the fact that it was the first piece of legislation that Kay Ivey signed, I didn't realize that. And she's pretty much, you know, letting the word out this week that she's running for governor. Oh my gosh, this is perfect.
Yeah. What a bleak,
really sad.
What a bleak way to look at this.
He's telling the truth. I agree. Totally.
I agree with that. I don't
disagree.
I just didn't think that, you know, but you're right. If Bell and the Republican consultants got together, they're high-fiving each other and saying, yeah,
they have to
it's
have
a win for everybody.
To do. And this was a good one on their part.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah, it's because Bell, the city of Birmingham, their mayoral election is next week. So he gets something to run on because he has, you know, some tough competition. And then, of course, right, the Attorney General, he's up for election. Everybody gets a little piece of it, but guess what? Nothing happens anyway.
No, that's exactly
race baiting is big business.
Well, real quick, we're out of time here in the segment. What happens here? Is the monument there a month from now?
Yes. Because there's a state law there. Yeah, it's going to go to court.
There's a GoFundMe account, actually, to have the city pay for this if they are fined. Now, GoFundMe has rules against breaking the law and things like that, so I assume it'll go down, but they're trying to raise money for it. I'm telling you, this thing is just in its infancy. We're about to see a lot of chaos over these things here in the near future. Maybe not in the state of Alabama, but everywhere else. All right, stay tuned. We got a lot more coming up. We'll get to the biggest story of the day. What's the most important thing going on for us? Stay tuned. Yellowhammer TV live. Welcome back to Yellowhammer TV Live. Let's talk about what's important to us. Stan, wrap it up for me.
I think it centers around Stacey George's filing of an ethics complaint against the mayor of Birmingham for attempting to take down the memorial. Stacey George is familiar with the elements of ethics violations, and this is a big story.
He's also good at grandstanding. He's running for governor, so we'll see where that takes us. Shannon Reeves.
Big story. This is the notion of letting Trump be Trump. The stories will be written about Donald Trump and the president, his statements as to what he felt about race and the situation in Charlottesville. I think it's a big thing to watch, because when you decide and you raise your hand to be president of the United States, you are Mr. President. You're no longer Donald.
Yeah, can we do a thing where we do an alternate theory where we just allow Donald Trump to be anybody else? No. Anybody else. I don't even care who it is. Be anybody else. The biggest story for me, the most important thing today, back to the monuments. In Atlanta, there was a peace statue. A statue where an angel is getting a Confederate soldier to put down his firearm. Activists showed up yesterday and tried to tear it down. They tried to tear down a statue of Joan of Arc in New Orleans. We're losing our mind here, folks. We've got to get it together and come together on something. We'll be back tomorrow. Yellowhammer TV Live.